While headlines focus on Europe's housing crisis, few realize how one nation shrewdly turned another's collapse into unprecedented gains. Poles are buying Spanish apartments at record pace. 3,118 purchases in 2023 alone. They're not just investing. They're capitalizing on Spain's past economic catastrophe by securing prime Mediterranean real estate that once symbolized Europe's biggest bubble. What they're gaining goes far beyond property.
In less than a decade, house prices in the EU rose by 53% on average.
Poland faces a housing crisis that would cripple most nations. A 100-square-meter apartment in Warsaw. 270,000 euros, that's up from 189,000 just 5 years ago. A 21% quarterly surge that's eating Polish savings alive. Young families can't afford homes. Retirement plans evaporate into rent payments. And with Russia at the border, the anxiety isn't just financial, it's existential. But here's where Poland's story diverges from decline. While other nations panic, Polish buyers identified an opportunity 3,000 kilometers south, Spain. The same Spain that crashed so hard in 2008 it needed a 180 billion euro bailout for troubled bank assets. The same Spain where house construction collapsed from 664,000 starts in 2006 to 29,000 by 2013. Spain's misfortune became Poland's opening. EU membership handed Poles the keys. Schengen access eliminated visa barriers. Suddenly, viewing properties in Barcelona or Valencia was as simple as driving to Berlin. No permits needed for apartments, no restrictions on EU citizens. The legal framework that once protected Spanish buyers now welcomed Polish investors with open arms. The numbers tell the story of strategic timing. 3,118 Polish purchases in 2023. That's not a trickle, it's a flood. Up from 2,973 in 2022, by the first quarter of 2024, Poles had already closed 800 deals. They represent 3.2% of all foreign buyers in Spain now, nearly doubling from 1.9% in 2021. This isn't random tourism. This is calculated economic positioning. Poland's domestic chaos, rising prices, geopolitical tension, currency volatility created urgency. Spain's recovery created opportunity. But timing alone doesn't explain the surge. What fueled Polish buyers wasn't desperation, it was power. Economic power that most of Europe still refuses to acknowledge. To understand Poland's Spanish gains, you need to see what Spain lost. 1997, Spanish property prices sat at 700 euros per square meter. Comfortable, sustainable. Then the euro arrived, bringing ultra-low interest rates designed for Germany's disciplined economy. Spain got German rates with Mediterranean ambitions. Banks flooded the market with cheap credit. Buy now, prosper forever became the national mantra. By 2006, those same square meters cost 2,000 euros, a 150% increase in under a decade. Land prices 500% higher, the largest jump in the entire OECD. Family debt hit 115% of disposable income. Construction and housing consumed 18.5% of Spain's GDP. The Eurozone average, 9.25%. Spain had doubled down on a bubble that economists saw coming from orbit. Then 2008 arrived. House starts collapsed from 664,923 in 2006 to a mere 29,232 by 2013. Banks hemorrhaged, the government scrambled. Non-performing mortgages hit 2.8%. 180 billion euros in troubled assets sat rotting on bank balance sheets. Families who bought at the peak watched their life savings vanish into negative equity. Spain's bubble didn't just pop, it detonated. But while Spain burned, Poland was busy joining the club that would change everything. 2004 marked Poland's EU accession. 2007 brought Schengen membership. Suddenly, Polish citizens had legal rights across 27 nations. They could live, work, invest anywhere in the EU without barriers. Perfect timing? No. Strategic foresight? Poland's GDP grew 9.2% from the fourth quarter of 2019 to the third quarter of 2022. The EU average, 2.7%. Polish wages in purchasing power parity ranked just behind Spain's. The nation that once struggled under Soviet collapse now wielded buying power that rivaled Mediterranean economies. Bartłomiej Grivniak from TripInvest watched the transformation firsthand. There was an explosion of interest after the Ukraine invasion, he said. Those who were concerned about cash quickly decided to make a transaction. Spain was the most popular choice because it is far away and relatively cheap. Cheap compared to Warsaw's inflation, accessible thanks to EU law. Spain's crash created the discount. Poland's rise created the buyers. EU membership created the bridge. What happened next wasn't luck, it was the inevitable result of strategic positioning meeting historical opportunity. Tomasz runs a business in Poland. Smart guy, watched Warsaw apartment prices spiral into insanity and made a decision that would define his financial future. He bought Spanish property. 85,000 to 106,000 euros, roughly 400 to 500,000 Polish zloty. Not a fortune by Western standards. But for that price in Poland, maybe a cramped flat in a suburb with no future. In Spain, a holiday home, a rental income stream, a hedge against zloty volatility. And most importantly, a life raft if Poland's geopolitical nightmare worsens. Prices in Spain are rising, Tomasz told reporters. If the apartment increases in value, I don't rule out selling it and buying a smaller one. That's not speculation, that's portfolio management. And Tomasz isn't alone. Those 3,118 Polish purchases in 2023 represent families making the same calculation. Warsaw's domestic market offers stress. Spain offers strategy. The math works beautifully. Spain's tourism sector drives consistent rental demand. Prime rents rose steadily after 2018. Foreign buyers increased 19% in the first 9 months of 2022, compared to all of 2021. Poland captured 3.2% of that surge, a near doubling from 1.9% the year before. But the gains aren't just financial, they're psychological, emotional, strategic. Polish families buying Spanish apartments aren't just diversifying assets, they're buying peace of mind in a world that feels increasingly unstable. Russia's shadow looms over Eastern Europe. Ukraine's war isn't theoretical for Poles, it's next door. Grzyuniak's comment about buyers seeking places far away isn't marketing speak, it's survival instinct. Spain offers what Poland's domestic market can't: distance from conflict, Schengen mobility, Mediterranean lifestyle, and appreciation potential from a recovered market that crashed so hard it had nowhere to go but up. Consider the Enrico family's experience during Spain's bubble. They sold 3 homes at peak prices, capitalizing on the frenzy before the crash. Their timing was luck. Polish buyers today, their timing is informed strategy. They're entering a stabilized market with rising demand and limited supply, the opposite of Spain's 2006 excess. They're not just buying property, they're buying a strategic advantage. Poland's economic strength, that 9.2% GDP growth while Europe stagnated, created a generation of buyers with capital to deploy. Spain's recovery created a market ready to absorb it. The convergence isn't coincidence. It's the natural result of Poland refusing to play the role of struggling Eastern Bloc nation. The Polish diaspora in the UK, Germany, Ireland, and the US watch these purchases with pride. They see their home country outmaneuvering Western rivals who once looked down on Polish workers. Now, Poles own the vacation homes. Poles collect the rental yields. Poles secure the escape routes. Spain's bubble was a catastrophe for Spanish families. For Poland, it became a generational wealth transfer disguised as real estate recovery. Let's debunk the myths that keep people from seeing Poland's true position. Myth 1. Spain's market is still too risky after 2008. Wrong. Deutsche Hypo's 2018 report confirmed Spain's recovery was legitimate. Rising rents, increasing foreign demand, supply constraints in major cities, the bubble's devastation taught Spain painful lessons about over-leveraging and construction excess. Today's market operates under stricter lending standards and realistic pricing. Poles aren't buying into a repeat bubble. They're buying into a post-crash stabilization that offers actual value. Myth 2. Poles face restrictions on Spanish property purchases. Also wrong. EU citizens, including Poles, face 0 restrictions on buying Spanish apartments. None. The permit requirement applies only to land purchases, and even that's a bureaucratic formality. For residential flats, sign the contract, pay the 10% transfer tax, register with the notary. Done. Poland's EU membership eliminated every barrier that once protected Spanish markets from Eastern European buyers. Everything you thought you knew about Spain's property market is wrong. The mechanics are straightforward for Polish buyers. First, research via official Registrados de España data and platforms like Amron. Second, secure financing. Banks offer mortgages, though cash deals avoid complexity if you're under the €1,000 to €2,500 limits for transactions. Third, sign contracts. A private sales agreement first, then the public deed. Fourth, register and pay taxes. Simple, legal, accessible. But here's what makes Polish buyers different from the speculative frenzy that destroyed Spain in 2008. They're not over-leveraging on fantasies of infinite appreciation. They're deploying capital from real economic growth. Poland's GDP growth of 9.2% from late 2019 to mid-2022 wasn't debt-fueled bubble expansion. It was productivity gains, EU integration benefits, and strategic positioning in global supply chains. Polish wages in purchasing power parity rank just behind Spain's now. A stunning reversal from the pre-EU era when Polish workers cleaned Spanish hotels for pennies. Economist Gentier studied Spain's bubble in detail. His analysis revealed the core mistake. Banks encourage debt based on hope rather than fundamentals. Spanish household debt jumped from 31.6% of GDP in 2001 to 64.6% by 2009. The government cheered it on. Buy became policy. Contrast that with Polish buyers today. They're using accumulated savings and income from Poland's actual economic expansion. They're not betting on Spanish prices doubling again in 5 years. They're securing stable assets in a market that's recovered from catastrophe and now offers reasonable returns with Schengen mobility benefits. The Bank of Spain's own analysts noted that household consumption fell harder than residential investment during the crash. A 20% drop that revealed how overextended Spanish buyers had become. Polish buyers entering now face none of that systemic fragility. They're buying into recovery, not mania. Expert consensus is clear. Poland's surge in Spanish purchases reflects economic strength, not recklessness. Grisniak's observation about the explosion of interest after Ukraine's invasion wasn't about panic buying. It was about Polish families with actual capital making rational decisions to diversify away from geopolitical risk. The mechanics favor Poland. The myths protect the ignorant, and the economic fundamentals, Poland's sustained growth versus Spain's learned caution, create an asymmetry that Polish buyers are exploiting with precision. The story doesn't end with 3,000 purchases. It's only beginning. Short-term projections through 2026 show Polish buyers maintaining the 3,000-plus annual pace. Amron's 2024 analysis confirms domestic price alerts continue pushing capital abroad. Spain's urban rents and prices keep rising due to supply shortages, exactly what Real Instituto Elcano documented in their 2024 housing studies. Medium-term, 2027 through 2029, the dynamics intensify. Poland's housing shortages worsen as the nation urbanizes faster than construction can match. Global Property Guide's 2025 projections show this gap expanding, not closing. Meanwhile, Spain's tourism sector, which drives rental demand, maintains 5 to 10% annual foreign buyer growth based on BBVA Research's historical patterns. Polish buyers positioned early will see their assets appreciate, while Warsaw prices become even more unattainable.